Hey, parents, welcome back or welcome to the Parenting Athletic Kids podcast. If you haven't been here before, my name is Travis Rogers. I'm a mental performance coach. I've written a book called Parenting Athletic Kids, and then have now spun off this podcast kind of based on that book. What we do here is myself, guests bring to you thoughts, theories, ideas, tools, techniques, things that you can implement to help your son or daughter get the most out of their athletic experience. Today, it's going to be just me, and I'm going to talk about ruminating thoughts. And what ruminating thoughts are thoughts that our sons or daughters are having repeatedly. Generally, we're talking about negative thoughts or unuseful thoughts, thoughts that aren't helping them, but they just sit with these thoughts and they come back over and over and over again, and they can't seem to break this cycle. So what I want to start with is just kind of an explanation of ruminating thoughts. And again, it's repetitive thoughts. But the problem is they don't understand or have a process for figuring out what is causing the problem. So I'm going to give you an example. My son strikes out frequently and he's constantly thinking about strikeouts, but he doesn't have a process and he knows he doesn't like it. Negative emotions coming from it, bad thoughts coming from it, but he can't break this cycle of thoughts. So I'm guessing if you're tuning into this podcast, you have a son or daughter in sports, maybe you've seen this before. Maybe you've heard them talking about this before. Maybe it's come up in car rides. You hear them talking to friends, coaches, whatever the case may be. But they can't seem to break this cycle. There's a couple problems. One, they don't know that really when we're having thoughts like this, we're trying to solve a problem, but they don't realize that. So in the case of a kid striking out quite often, he's just thinking about the strikeout. He can't get the emotion of the strikeout out of his mind, how it feels. And it's not actually solving the problem. So what we need to do as parents, we need to help our sons and daughters solve the problem. Usually these negative thoughts, these ruminating thoughts, there's an emotion tied to it. And the emotion takes over. And then they can't get into a kind of a problem solving process or mode to be able to go back and really reflect. So first of all, we want to make sure when we are having conversations with our sons and daughters about negative thought patterns they're having ruminating thoughts, that they're not emotional at the time. If they're emotional, it's going to be really hard for them to go into processing mode. So let's let them get through the emotion. Maybe we need to help provide some emotional counseling at the time. That can be all right, but don't try to go into problem solving mode, and certainly don't throw fuel on the fire by adding more emotion or adding more strain. We need them to get through that. Once they're through that, we can talk to them about what is the actual problem. Okay, in this case, it's strikeouts. So are there things that they can do that will help them to strike out less? Do we need more practice, more batting practice? Do we need a better approach at the plate? Do we need more self-confidence? What things can we add in so they will strike out less, or that will be, at least they will have a process to strike out less? Usually, again, these ruminating thoughts, repetitive negative thoughts, there's just no answers. Our sons and daughters can't find answers, so they just keep going back to this place. Our job as parents can be to help them find the answers. So that's number one. Number two, second thing, what I suggest to my clients people that I work with is they journal after games, after practices. If they journal and have a process for journaling after games, after practice, whenever it could be, if they forgot to journal or aren't journaling now, it can be days later. Let's reflect on what we're ruminating on. So, let's just say after a game, the process after a game for journaling is writing down first and foremost what they did well. Things they did well. We got to start with that. Super powerful, gets us in a better mindset, changes emotions, hopefully, not always, but hopefully, starts us thinking about the things that we did really well. So what we did well. Second thing, what do I want to work on? So here's what squashes the negative ruminating thoughts. What do I want to work on? I write that down. Too many strikeouts. Okay. Next thing, how do I want to work on that? So now we've taken the emotion out of it, hopefully. We understand what's causing the emotion, the negative thoughts. And now we have a process for getting better in that area. Again, circling all the way back. Most of the time when we're having ruminating thoughts, we're not thinking about working on a process that will help us to overcome whatever the negative thing is that happened to us. So now we have a process. What I did well, what do I want to work on? How will I work on that? Take it one step further. Generally, I think about these things in physical and mental ways. So, what did I do well physically, mentally? And this is kind of age dependent. And if your son or daughter is just starting out at this, you might not want to take this second step into it, but maybe if they're all in on it. So what did I do well physically, mentally? What do I want to work on the physical side, on the mental side? And sometimes these things are going to cross over. If we're going back to I'm striking out a lot, there might be some physical things to work on. There might be some mental things to work on. The next step, how do I work on these things? How do I get better at this? Physically, mentally. Now we have a process. Okay. When I do this with clients, when they close that journal, we're done with that. We go on to the next thing. Okay. The next thing is really important here too. Another piece to reduce ruminating thoughts is most people try to stop thinking about something. I don't want to think about those strikeouts. That doesn't work. We need to, number one, figure out a process to change whatever that negative thing is, like journaling, what I did well, what do I want to work on, how I'm going to work on it. Two, we try to go to some other thoughts. We try to take them to Chipotle, Dairy Queen. We get away from those things. Okay. Oftentimes that will stop the ruminating thoughts. But what we try to do, our kids try to do, I'm just going to push it away. That very rarely works, if ever. So we have a process for taking care of the negative thing that happened, and or we move on to something else. We change our thought patterns. We go to, again, thinking about what we're having for dessert, all the great things we did in the game. We have another game coming up tomorrow, next week, whatever it might be. So a couple great ways, again, just to circle back really quick, parents. If you see your son or daughter, if this is something that comes up with them a lot, they played a game on Saturday, they're still thinking about it on Wednesday, negative thoughts, negative self-talk. Let's sit down with them. Let's take the emotion out of it. What did you do well in that game? And so this doesn't have to happen right after a game if they're not doing this. 4 days later, a month later. Sometimes these ruminating thoughts, 6 months later, they're still going back to these same negative thoughts, ruminating thoughts. Let's sit down, let's talk about it. What did you do well that game, that day? If they're not even thinking about that anymore, we go to the second thing. Well, what is it that was so negative? What is it that you want to work on? And then again, how will you work on those things? And or when this ruminating thought comes up, go to some other place. Think about something positive. Think about your friends. Think about the next game. Think about the next practice, whatever it might be. So I hope that helps. This is, again, super important and super common in athletes. So pay a little bit of attention to it. Big thing here, remember, let the emotion die down. Help, if you can, bring that emotion down. Now we can have discussions about this stuff. Again, thanks for being here. Hope this helps. Again, I've started a second podcast and I'm going to record that right now just for the athletes. It's called Get Your Mind Right Podcast. So if you think, and we're going to talk about the same thing here with the athletes, if you think that might be useful to your son or daughter, please share that podcast with them. Spotify, Apple, YouTube. I think most of the kids these days are on YouTube. So please share that with them. Thanks a lot. And we'll be back again with another podcast really soon.